Hi, I'm Temo, and this is Tara.
Hello.
And I'm Jamie, and today we'll be discussing some alternative and ethical ways of harvesting stem cells. Before we get into the argument, let's take a quick look at what stem cells actually are and why they're important. You may recall from your high school bio class that stem cells are generalized cells with the ability to become specialized through cell division. There are two distinct types of stem cells, embryonic and adult. Adult stem cells exist throughout the body and are used to create only a small range of cell types, whereas embryonic stem cells come from embryos and are pluripotent, meaning they can become any type of cell in the body. It's for this reason that embryonic stem cells have the most potential for good. According to Foraz and McGuckin from the Cell Therapy Research Institute, around 70% of patients in several countries never find a liver donor, resulting in a mortality rate of 20% per year from the waiting list. Not only would stem cells fix this by increasing the number of available organs, but the cost of transplants would also decrease drastically. So how do we get all the embryonic stem cells to do this sort of thing? Well, that's exactly what we'll be covering today. First, we'll take a look at the current harvesting methods, and then we'll explore some of the more ethical alternatives.
The most commonly practiced harvesting method today is also the one that has sparked the most controversy in regards to ethics. This is mostly due to the fact that the embryo is killed in the process of retrieving its stem cells. The embryos used are obtained via donation or cultured in a lab using sperm and an egg. The desired cells are located at the center of the embryo, and in order to acquire them, the inner cell mass must be disintegrated. This essentially splits the embryo and leads to its death. According to Laundrie and Zucker from Columbia University, an undeveloped organism, such as an embryo, is considered to be dead once it has lost its ability of cellular division, growth, and integration, even if its cells are individually alive. So, in the end, this process of splitting off the inner cell mass kills the embryo, which is why so many people are against the idea of stem cell research. As you may have expected, this method of extraction infuriates those with religious beliefs. According to the European Molecular Biology Organization, the topic under debate is whether or not stem cells go against God's creation. Furthermore, the Catholic Church has been the biggest voice against this. Catholicism claims that embryonic stem cell research is considered contrary to the moral law, due to its violation of the creation of the human embryo. In contrast to Catholicism, Islamic and Jewish views consider the reproductive cloning of embryonic stem cells as another way to accomplish good. However, according to Frizzetto, there is no agreed consensus of the moral status of the embryo regarding Islamic thoughts. This means that the subject is still being discussed within Islamic community, and it's possible to sway the public's opinion on the ethicality of the use of embryonic stem cells. Hopefully, we can accomplish this today by introducing some more ethical ways of acquiring embryonic stem cells.
Now let's compare today's current harvesting method to some alternatives. The most promising method being altered nuclear transfer, or ANT. As you can see from the diagram, this procedure involves taking a genetically altered nucleus from a non-sex cell and transferring it into a donated female sex cell called an oocyte. The result is a source of embryonic stem cells called a morula. This means that at no point in the harvesting process is an embryo or human life at stake. However, this does require female donors to supply researchers with eggs for the harvesting procedure. Additionally, the process of ANT is very costly, which is why stem cell research needs the support of everyone so that it can receive further funding. But if this procedure is too inconvenient, there are always other ways to get embryonic stem cells without being unethical. Blastomere extraction, for instance, is an extremely safe procedure that occurs while an embryo is being tested for gene abnormalities. Unlike the current method of acquiring stem cells, which extracts them when the embryo is later in development, blastomere extraction takes advantage of the numerous blastomeres, or cell clusters, that appear in a 2-day-old embryo. Research has shown that due to the lack of development, it's easier to extract the stem cells without destroying the embryo. After the gene tests reveal no defects, a single blastomere is taken out of the embryo via pipette, and the embryo is implanted back into the mother. The loss of one blastomere is nothing to worry about, since the other existing ones will duplicate to make up for the loss. This method puts no extra stress on the mother, and most importantly, the embryo is not destroyed in the process. Because of this, blastomere extraction is seen as one of the more ethical and convenient options for acquiring stem cells.
Aside from these two methods, there is one last notable way to collect stem cells. This involves extracting neonatal stem cells from the umbilical cord after birth. While this process does not yield embryonic stem cells, the cells it does provide have been shown to be partially pluripotent. This means that they can still solve a lot of health problems that we have, like diabetes, cerebral palsy, and some autoimmune disorders. The most exciting part about all of this is the fact that stem cells are harvested post-birth, once the umbilical cord is out of the mother. As a result, the mother endures no further hardship, and the baby is not a part of the process in any way. So, although this umbilical cord method does not produce any embryonic stem cells, we still consider it important due to its promising pluripotency and lack of invasivity. Clearly, there are a variety of ways of acquiring embryonic stem cells that do not involve harming or even using embryos. Now, it's just a matter of making these procedures the norm. The issue is that these methods of harvesting are relatively expensive. If we're to make researching embryonic stem cells an ethical practice, we, as a society, need to support the right harvesting methods by increasing funding for them. By just sitting back and calling stem cell research unethical, you are not helping to stop the bad practices that make it so. However, by supporting the good practices, you can help change the way embryonic stem cells are harvested. And if there is something that we can all agree on, it's that the current method of harvesting needs to be changed. For the public to accept and support this research, the method of extraction has to become a more ethical process. And as you now know, there are several alternatives to choose from. This leads us to the following question. Which procedures should researchers lean towards in order to continue their work, keeping in mind the ethicality that the public demands? Well, there's no right answer to this because different procedures have different benefits. For instance, ant doesn't involve an embryo at all, but it does require egg donations. And in comparison, blastomere extraction requires no donations, but it does involve an embryo. Lastly, there's the umbilical cord method that takes cells from birth waste but doesn't yield complete pluripotency. So overall, the appropriate method depends on the situation. What's most important is that we support these alternatives instead of immediately labeling stem cell research as unethical. Because in the end, it all comes down to saving and improving people's lives. And what's more ethical than that?